A warmer for the low. Welcome to lovely Las Vegas for Coast to Coast Hoops with myself, Greg Hoops Peterson, now part of the XII Family Podcast. We've got an excellent podcast for you as we're going to be joined in a few minutes by Ryan McIntyre. He does such great work over at the Sports Gambling Podcast Network. We're going to be chatting with him about what we've all seen over the last week and a half or so in terms of Big 12 teams. He does a great job following all things West Virginia. With Russ Hodge coming in, he's been able to bring in some relatively good pieces. He's been able to do a nice job, be able to get West Virginia set for the upcoming season. We're going to be talking about that. We're going to be taking a look at the entirety of that conference and just what he's been noticing in the transfer portal, just how much mayhem, how much craziness there's been out there as well, and so much more. So we're going to have a great time chatting with him in segment number 1 here in the next few minutes. And then in the final segment, we don't necessarily have the world's most rambunctious amount of news and notes from college basketball from Sunday, mainly because it was both 420 and it was Easter Sunday. But that said, we do have a few news and notes to be able to hit upon with you guys. And like I said, this is going to be a lot of 2-segment podcasts, just with the fact that I don't have any games to recap or anything like that. But I do want you guys to fire in any questions that you have for this podcast. If there's anything that you want me to address on this podcast, you have one of 2 ways to be able to fire those in. First one is my Twitter/X timeline at gunit_D1. Keep in mind, letters EM, they mean does not matter, so as per usual, please do send these into the timeline. And the other way is via an Apple Podcast review. If you rate this podcast 5 stars, it is very much appreciated. From there, you're able to fire in whatever you'd like to hear on this podcast via that 5-star review. And everything today, it is brought to you by Edge Boost. Over at Edge Boost, they are making sure that bettors are able to access their funds 24/7, 365 on leap years, 366 days out of the year, because it is not anything that runs on credit or anything like that. It's just straight up a bank account that you're able to utilize whenever you need things. And when you go to edgeboost.bet, utilize the promo code of Greg, G-R-E-G. You're able to get a dollar for dollar match on your first $25 deposit. That's over at edgeboost.bet, promo code G-R-E-G. Now let's talk with our good friend Ryan McIntyre. He and Kobe Dant do such a great job over at the Sports Gambling Podcast Network with the show, The College Experience. On top of that, with Ryan, he does a great job with the Ryan and Rush show as well. Wealth of knowledge when it comes to college basketball. Man, that has been in the game. I know that he was on the staff of both South Carolina and West Virginia back in the day as well. And you're able to follow him on Twitter/X at Moneyline_Max, spelled M-A-C. And Ryan, we are recording this on Easter, so happy Easter, and thank you so much for joining me.
Greg, I appreciate you having me. Unfortunately, we got a long way to go to November.
Yes, we certainly do, but we have also a long way to go in terms of these transfer portal moves as well, because as we are doing this, north of 2,270 players in the transfer portal, and I mean, just how do you go about trying to be able to gauge all this? I feel like I've asked you before, but I feel like it might need some adjustment with this being even bigger than what we saw last offseason, because we've already eclipsed the amount of people that we saw enter into the transfer portal last offseason, and we still have about a week plus remaining for these guys to be able to enter.
Yeah, I feel like it gets more wild every single year that we do this. It feels like a bigger name hits the portal every single day. And like you said, there's still a week to go. And I hope some of these programs save some of their money so that they can get some of these guys on the back end.
Absolutely. And I mean, maybe I'm out of line in thinking this, but should we just assume that everyone's in the transfer portal until we hear that they're coming back? Because I think that that would be an easier way to be able to track these guys, to know who's actually coming back versus trying to list out everyone in the transfer portal. Because if I'm doing the math correct, we've got more guys in the portal that are actually than our guys that are not in the portal right now.
Oh, absolutely. And that's why I thought it was hilarious with Braden Smith that they did the image of him coming back, the announcement. Honestly, we should probably report the guys that just come back to school because they are in the minority now. It's just such a wild time in college hoops. I know we talk about it every single time we do this show. Like, if you're coming back to school, you're in the minority. But I will say the teams that bring back the most and have some continuity usually end up faring well. We saw it with 3 out of the 4 Final Four teams having a lot of retention from the previous year.
Yeah, no question about it. And I do think that that leads into an interesting question as well, because there are 2 schools that really stand out to me that are going to be bringing back quite a bit. Purdue, because you mentioned it with Braden Smith, have to figure that Fletcher Lawyer, guys like that are going to be back in the fold. And they had a really nice add in Oscar Clough as well to be able to shore up things down low. And then Houston, because they've got really good chemistry as well. Are there any teams that have stood out to you outside of those 2 that are really bringing back a ton? And I feel like this should be a pretty simple question to answer, but I don't know about you, but other than those 2 schools, I don't see a lot of teams that are bringing back a ton other than maybe like a Towson closer to your neck of the woods.
Yeah, those are the 2, and I think those are probably the 2 best cultures in college basketball now, Purdue and Houston. I think Matt Painter and Kelvin Sampson done an unbelievable job of figuring out ways to keep guys, whether it's their culture, whether it's just the next man up mentality. Those are the two that really caught my eye. And then, yeah, at the mid-major level, credit to Pat, Scary, and Towson for finding a way to keep some guys. But other than that, man, I feel like UConn has done a decent job keeping some of their guys, but for the most part, everybody's replacing about 10 guys.
Yeah, I mean, it's absolutely insane what we have been seeing over the last few seasons in college basketball. As Ryan McIntyre, who does such great work over at the Sports Gambling Podcast Network, is joining me on Coast to Coast Hoops, and this program is going to be replacing quite a bit as well, but I mean, that's for reasons that are a little bit more outside their control. That'd be West Virginia, because when you have Darren DeVries move on and go to Indiana, you know that there's going to be an exodus. Any team that loses their head coach, other than what we saw William and Mary last year. So credit to Coach Earl, what he was able to do last season, but whenever you lose your coach, you're pretty much going to need to replace your entire roster. But what have you seen out of Russ Hoge thus far this season with West Virginia? Because I feel like he's doing a really good job in the transfer portal, and I think that this is going to be pretty much North Texas North in terms of what we're seeing with West Virginia right now.
Yeah, Greg, I think Hodge has done a great job so far bringing in guys in, and I like the guys that he's brought in because he's brought in guys from winning programs. Chance Moore, 6'6" wing from the Bonnies. They've always wanted a consistent level with Mark Schmidt. And then he brings in a couple of his guys from North Texas as well, and Jasper Floyd at the point, and then Brendan Lorient in that kind of 3-4 glue guy. But then you also look at it, NIT name that we loved was Honor Huff. He brings him in as sharpshooter. He taps into Troy and Wilmington with that Jackson Fields, the 6'7", 6'8" kind of athlete, glue guy as well. And then the big fellow from Wilmington, Harlan Obiaya. I just think that you look at it, those are four programs that had a lot of winning over the last couple of years, and I value guys transferring up that do come from these winning programs.
And I'm so glad that you mentioned that with Chance Moore as well. How excited is he going to be that he doesn't need to play all 40 minutes this year as well? Because that's one thing that I've noticed with St. Bonaventure and the fact that they've been sort of the program that they have. Because with Dr. Schmidt, I think that he does a tremendous job of coaching up the X's and O's. He's a good man in general that knows what he's doing in college basketball. But that's one program in St. Bonaventure that I feel like has been a little bit limited the last few years because they have such a belief that they need all their starters to play all 40 minutes and they never go to their bench, which I find that to be very interesting. And I would think that these guys that have entered the transfer portal from St. Bonaventure are probably going to be feeling very happy about their next stop, that they're actually going to get a breather here and there.
Yeah, well, especially with how Hodge wants to play defensively. He was the mastermind behind those North Texas defense, even with Graham McCastle. So he likes to play 8+ guys. In an ideal world, he likes to play 10 guys. So I think that Chance Moore kind of fits right in, 6'6" athletic wing. And I thought he had a heck of a year, averaging 13-6 last year. So I look for him to keep taking a step and be a really good piece. But back to your original question, I think Hodge has done a really good job in the portal so far of identifying guys that fit how he wants to play.
Yep, I think that he has done an incredible job, as well as Ryan McIntyre, who does such great work over at the Sports Gambling Podcast Network. He is joining me on Coast to Coast Hoops. And how do you just gauge the Big 12 in general this offseason? Because with the Big 12, prior to what we've seen over the last, I guess you call it 24 months on the SEC, they were the big bad wolf in all of college basketball with the way that everything had been materializing, with the way that they had just been so rock solid back when they had the 10 teams in the conference, knowing that you get 7+ into the NCAA tournament. And I feel like this has honestly been a good offseason for teams like West Virginia, what have you, but I've also been impressed by schools like Baylor and some of the moves that they've been making as well.
Yeah, Baylor's going to have a completely new roster, so a new look Baylor Bears team. I think a lot of the teams, you just get impressed with the guys that they were able to keep. JT Toppin is as good as anybody's going to be a preseason All-American at Texas Tech, and then we mentioned Houston already with their continuity. I like what Arizona's done with Tommy Lloyd here. I think them going through the Big 12, knowing what it takes from a physicality standpoint. Kansas is going to be young, but I think they're going to be faster, more athletic in the post-Hunter Dickinson era. So I'm looking forward to seeing that, and they were able to bring Flory back as well. And then how can you not like what BYU's done? You bring in AJ, the freshman, who's going to be arguably the number 1 pick in the draft, and then Rob Wright. There's been rumors that maybe Darian Williams heads over to Provo if he doesn't finish out the NBA draft process. So I think the Big 12's in a really good position going into next year to contend for that top league spot again.
Yep, I'm right there with you. I think that it's been a really good offseason for the Big 12 and Baylor as well. I'm not sure how you feel about them, but I like the fact that they brought in Jocelyn Bodu, and it feels like there might be a little bit of philosophy shift with Baylor because they're bringing in more big men and more defense-oriented guys this offseason, it feels.
It really does. And it kind of goes back to the old Baylor. I feel like they got guard happy these last couple of years. And don't get me wrong, they had some really good guards, but their national championship team was built on toughness. Guys like Mark Vidal, guys like JTT at the front line with those defensive guards in Davion Mitchell. So I think they're trying to get back to the defensive end of the floor. I like what they've done so far with some of these portal additions.
Oh, I'm right there with you. As Ryan McIntyre does such great work over at the Sports Gambling Podcast Network, he is joining me right here on Coast to Coast Hoops, and I think that that's very vital for them as well. And what I think is going to be very intriguing in terms of these Big 12 teams as well as some of the teams that may be disappointed in the past season or two, because I actually do like what Utah's been able to bring in the transfer portal as well. They've got a new look. They have around a coach in the offseason as well. So I do think that bringing back something like Keanu Dawes, being able to pair him up with something like a James Okonkwo, I think that that's going to be working out relatively well for them. But I think that Kansas State might be one of the biggest wild cards in the conference this year. I want to get your thoughts on them because we know that they've got a lot of NIL money to spend. We know that Jerome Tang is able to get the most out of a team with the way that he was able to go to an Elite Eight in season number 1, but it does feel like a little bit of philosophy shift for them. They haven't gone after so many of these splashy names. They've went after Tariq Smith, Abdi Bashir Jr., along Kamari McGriff, two relatively solid players, but no guys are going to be sitting here like, oh, that's a top 10 guy in the transfer portal and everything like that. And I think that's going to be really interesting to see what they do this offseason because there's obviously a lot of holes with Kansas State. And for Kansas State, I feel like there's a lot of upside if they find the right guys. But at the same time, last 2 years, it just did not materialize for them.
Greg, I would say Kansas and Kansas State both, I think, have changed their philosophies here. And just like Baylor, I think they're being more strategic. I think the last year was the first time you had all that money. Hey, we could go buy a super team. Let's get as much talent in here. And it didn't work for either of them. And Tang, I'm not saying he's on the hot seat, but he is entering a big year here. Back-to-back missing the NCAA tournament. I know he went to the Elite Eight. I feel like he needs to get to the NCAA tournament or get back there this year, or otherwise he could be in that hot seat area headed into year number 5. So, yeah, I'm with you. I think taking guys more under the radar, sometimes less is more, especially in this portal.
And I want to pose this question to you as well, because I was asking this question last year as well. Do you feel like what Jerome Tang did in season number 1, leading Kansas State to the Elite Eight, was a little bit of a flash in the pan? Or do you feel like what we've seen these last 2 years is a little bit less representative? Because we have seen just 2 completely different Kansas State teams under Jerome Tang. That first year, everything was tremendous. And these last 2 years have been pretty big disappointments.
It's starting to feel like there was a little bit of a one-hit wonder. I think they did catch lightning in a bottle with Marquise Noel being able to play at such a high level. And then Keontae Johnson wasn't even supposed to play. He beat that heart attack at Florida that COVID year. That was a scary scene. He was able to come back. And there was questions how much he could really contribute. And he ended up being an all-league guy. So I think they did hit a little bit of lightning in a bottle, but they need to be much better than they have over the last 2 years, or he's going to be looking for another job.
Yep, I think so as well. I think that that's going to be a very interesting scenario to be taking a look at in general. And I know you and Kobe on your podcast, you do a tremendous job with your coaches series, which I'm sure that you guys are going to be getting that gas up within the next few months, because right now with regards to these coaches, it's a little bit difficult for them in April because they are right now providing the news that we are getting right now in terms of the transfer portal. They are trying to recruit 100 billion guys in the transfer portal. But just in terms of some of these coaching moves, we've talked about a few of them here in the offseason. Is there one or two that you want to highlight that you feel like have went a little bit under the radar? It could be a power conference team, it could be a mid-major, what have you, but is there a coaching situation or two that there's not a lot of people talking about that you feel like deserves a little bit more love than what it's getting?
Yeah. We haven't started the coaches series yet because they're a little bit busy right now trying to fill out these rosters. So we'll get them on starting in May once we have a little bit of confirmation on what these teams are going to look like. I think Brian Hodgson was a really good hire by South Florida. I think he did a great job at Arkansas State in 2 years. He comes from the NATO stream. And I just think that he's a rising star. And I think that South Florida was searching for their identity post Abdur Rahim, rest in peace. I think Hodgson's a guy that can really get this program going. And he's already done a good job in the portal, beating out some of the high majors for some of these guys. And I just think he's going to get some talent into that program. And then another one, I mean, I think everybody kind of likes this one, but he's still under the radar, I feel like, is Ben McCollum. I mean, what he was able to do at Drake last year was phenomenal. And now he comes over to Iowa. He's from Iowa City. This is home for him. So I think that this is a really good fit, a really good marriage. Happy to see guys like Bennett Sturts following coach to Iowa City. So I'm looking forward to seeing what these new look Hawkeyes look like.
Yeah, I am as well. It's going to be a different looking Hawkeyes team. There's no question about it. They go from a team that was playing, well, not a lot of defense whatsoever to a team that might actually play a lick of defense this season as well. And Ryan McIntyre being at Penn. I'm not sure what you think about that, but I think that is going to be very, very interesting to say the least. And that could go either really, really good or really, really bad with not a lot in between, in my opinion.
I like it because McCaffrey wasn't a big portal guy. And if you don't want to be a big portal guy, then go to an Ivy League school because they don't really do the portal that much other than they lose kids in the portal. So I kind of do like McCaffrey going back to his roots here for one last run in the Ivy League. It's going to be fun to watch.
It certainly is going to be, and how angry he gets on the sideline, that is always some good, clean family fun as well, because they've got the Franometer, where I think that it's like neutral state is him being very, very angry. So that's always a lot of fun to take a look at, but we can never be in an angry mood when you're aboard, Ryan, because you're a ball of energy. You do a great job gauging this great game that we all love of college basketball. Love the good people at home. Know it's all on tap for you, and how people can follow along on social media and other platforms.
Yes, sir, Greg. I always appreciate you having me on here. Find me at Moneyline_Mac, breaking down all this portal chaos, madness, whatever, mania, whatever word you want to use over there at the College Experience every single night. And we've started football previews here in a little bit as well. And the Mountaineer fans, the Ryan and Russ show is the place for you.
Absolutely. And we're going to go with Portal Combat to utilize a line from our good friend John Rothstein. Ryan, he does such a tremendous job gauging it all. And every single time he joins me, he lends such great insight. So big thanks, Ryan, for joining me right here on Coast to Coast Superstar, part of the VC Family Podcast. Coming up next, let's give you a recap of the news and notes we saw in college basketball over the last 24 hours. And we're back here in lovely Las Vegas for Coast to Coast Hoops with myself, Greg Hoops Peters, and now part of the VC Family Podcast. It was great to be able to get Ryan McIntyre aboard. He does such great work over at the Sports Gambling Podcast Network, taking a look at all things college basketball every single time he joins me. He lends such great insights, and he did so once again today. So a big thanks to Ryan for joining me in the last segment. Now it is that time of the podcast. I give you a recap of the news and notes that we saw in college basketball over the last 24 hours. This is a really good ad for VCU. Tyrell Ward is someone who's a former top 50 recruit. When he last played over at LSU during the 2023-24 season, missed all of last year due to injury and off-the-court issues, he was averaging 9 points per contest, shot 41.5% from three-point range. He's going to be adding on over to VCU, and for VCU, I am very impressed by what this team is doing in the transfer portal. You've got the younger Martelli, Phil Martelli Jr., who's been able to add some really nice pieces to this team, and I do think that the sky is the limit for this team out there in the Atlantic 10. They're bringing in Barry Evans along Keyshawn Mitchell from Brandon Jennings is going to be retained. Ahmad Noel is a former top 75 recruit. Jaden Tracy is going to be coming in as well. Another really good get for VCU. We will see how things continue to just matriculate in the transfer portal for them, but so far, very, very good there. Josiah Hammonds, he was over at Sam Houston State this last season, 38% three-point shooter, was able to give the team 6.5 points per contest. He has decided that he is going to be going on over to UIC and the Flames, and for UIC, it's been a little bit of an eclectic mix of different guys. I think that it's going to work out for them. I feel like UIC has really been able to take some nice strides forward under Rob Hassan, and they've got a nice mix of guys like Abdul Mamoa, really good defensive big man from Central Connecticut is coming in. Mekhi Lowry, he was over at Towson, rock solid defender. Now you get a little bit more of an offensive piece in Ammon, so that's something that I do like to see, and I do think that they've got some good balance there. You got Will Batchelor, he was over at Holy Cross this last season. He was a starter during the 2023-24 season and missed all of last year due to injury, but when he was playing 2 seasons ago, he was able to shoot 38% from three-point range, log for the team about 8.5 points per contest. He is heading on over to Stonehill, and it does feel like this Stonehill team is starting to take some strides forward. They were at the Division II level a few seasons ago, so they're trying to get things right in terms of NIL, what have you. They've got Radon Tutvik, who he was over at Maine a few seasons ago, 6'10" big man at Rex Sutherland, who I thought was going to be rock solid at New Hampshire before he went down with an injury last season, so they've been able to make some nice adds there, and that's something that you do like to see for them. Something else that you'd like to see is this man landing at UNLV, Laji Dembele. Hopefully I said that correctly. He was able to make 21 starts this season, 4.5 points, 3.5 rebounds per game at 6'8". Not really a guy that's going to be a nimble force and pop it from 3-point range or anything like that, but still, this is a UNLV team that under Josh Pastner has really been able to do a nice job of hitting the transfer portal hard for UNLV. It's been a mix of just a little bit of everything for them at this point, and I do think that they're forming a well-rounded roster. I don't know who that necessarily go-to guy is going to be with Dean and Thomas being out of the fold, but Al Green being a sharpshooter from Louisiana Tech, Emmanuel Stephen, a 7-footer from Arizona, Dre Gibbs Lawhorn coming in. These guys are very rock solid, so I do feel like things are going in the right direction, and UNLV is adding some relatively good depth. You've got Sir Isaac Heron. He was over at Oral Roberts. He, during the 2023-24 season, was about a 58% shooter. He's able to give you a block, 5.5 points. He's able to pop it a little bit from 3-point range. He has decided that he is going to be going to Louisiana Tech. Is he a guy that is going to be like completely elevating Louisiana Tech and taking them to places never seen before? Most likely not, but I do think that this is a relatively good ad for them. I think that he's going to be able to step in right away, be able to give this team a little bit of versatility. He was starting to shoot threes a little bit more with Oral Roberts 2 seasons ago before going down with an injury, but still this is a man that's going to be very strong on the glass. And with Louisiana Tech, we remember the Bacho man, Daniel Bacho, what he was able to deliver for the team last 2 seasons. So I do like this pickup for them. This is a more ancillary ad for Pepperdine, but Sile Phipps, he was over at Grand Canyon last season, just didn't see a lot of minutes in general. He only averaged about 2 points per contest. He had a little bit of fanfare coming out of high school, but not necessarily a guy that was like a top 200 recruit or anything like that. He's decided to go to Pepperdine. For Pepperdine, I do believe that this program is very much getting a bit more online. They did a nice job bringing in Ed Schilling last season to be able to just build a little bit of momentum in general. For Phipps, he's a guy that stands right around 6'1", not necessarily the most amazing shooter in the world. I picture him being a little bit more of a point guard, and for Pepperdine last season, they actually did a very good job with Mo Odom being able to run the point for them. So I do think that there's a little bit of upside here for them. So they're taking a bit of a shot on Phipps. We will see how that's going to pan out, but I do like the attempt there to be able to just fortify things, and I do like this as well. Trayson Eaglestaff, he is heading on over to West Virginia, so that's a big one for our good friend Ryan McIntyre. We unfortunately were unable to talk to him about that the last time he joined, so we're going to need to do that when he joins the next time around, because for Eaglestaff, he's a 6'6" combo player that was over at North Dakota this past season. He was able to give the team 19 points, 2.5 assists, a guy that's able to really shoot it well from 3-point range, as well shot about 37% from the outside. There were a lot of teams that wanted him. He had that, I believe it was 51-point performance against Alabama. It might have been the 40-point performance against, I think the 51 came against South Dakota State, but this guy is a very, very nice go-to scorer for West Virginia under Russ Hodge. They've done a really good job of just being able to bring in pieces in general, as you've got coming in with them from North Texas, Brennan Laurent, along with Jasper Floyd. Hunter Ruff is a nice shooter that comes in from Chattanooga. Chance Moore, he is going to be able to give you more. Harlan Obiana, all these guys. I really like what West Virginia is doing right now, and they have themselves right now a very nice roster in the works, and this team has a nice roster in the works as well. As I do like the fact that you've got Alvaro Fergulius, hopefully I said that correctly. He's going on over from Robert Morris to Iowa. Iowa doing a very good job under Ben McCollum, and I believe that Ben McCollum is going to get that team playing good, rock-solid defense for Fulgarius. At 6'9", he does it all. He's able to shoot in the mid-30s from 3-point range, 14 points, 9 boards, 3 assists, 1.2 steals, 1.4 blocks, and a partridge and a pear tree. This guy just does it all. This is exactly what Iowa needs in that McCollum system, and I believe that they're going to be very good in the Big Ten immediately. They hired on a guy that just knows basketball. They've got a lot of guys coming on over from Drake. As a matter of fact, 5 different guys. Khalil Combs, along with Manny Wu, Bennett Sturts, Tavion Banks, a little bit more of an ancillary guy in Isaiah Howard, but that shows just what a sort of a system they've got. Brandon Housen is able to be a nice go-to 3-point shooter as well, so I think that this has been a tremendous cycle thus far for Iowa, so I do like that. Kalu Mading, he was over at Norfolk State this last season, and he was rock solid for them. 7.5 points, 4 boards, a little bit over a block per contest. he's able to do a little bit of everything. He's actually a forward. I think I called him a guard, so my apologies there. He has decided that he's going to be going to Charlotte. For Charlotte, this was a team that was very weak on the glass this past season with Mating. He's not a guy that's necessarily going to be stepping out, popping it from three, but he was a guy that was able to be very efficient around the rim, shot north of 66% from the floor, so I do like that pickup for them. I do like this pickup as well as Drew McKenna. Just couldn't see a lot of minutes over at Georgetown this last season, about 2 points, nearly 2 rebounds per contest. He has decided that he is going to be heading on over to Old Dominion, an Old Dominion team that it was rough for them to begin the season last year. You can tell that they were really starting to find their sea legs when it came to conference play, and for Old Dominion, I do believe that they've got the right coach in there. They've got Mr. Mike Jones. You might ask who, and I say Coach Mike Jones, but being able to bring in a guy like a McKenna, who was a pretty highly touted prospect coming out of high school. If you look at the class of 2023, 247 Sports rated him as a top 175 guy, 6'7", a little bit of a do-it-all guy. Hopefully he can shoot threes a little bit better than what Old Dominion did a season ago, but I like that pickup for them. Tanner Toolson, he has decided that he is going to be going to TCU. A little bit of a gamble from TCU because we saw them invest a lot in the mid-major guys last season, and they didn't necessarily pan out for Toolson. I don't know how his game is going to translate to a school like TCU. 13.5 points, a little bit over a steal per contest at Utah Valley. I mean, a perfectly fine mid-major guard. I don't think that he's going to be getting a lot of minutes for TCU. Now, if TCU plans to utilize him as like a number 7, number 8 guy, that's going to be just fine. But in terms of TCU, they haven't done a ton in the portal. Brock Harding, who comes on over from Iowa, he's able to be a rock-solid distributor. And Jaden Pierre, he's a nice go-to scorer that comes in for Providence. But do need to see what they're going to be able to add down low, as well as I believe that they lose Ernest Uday as well. So you do have a few question marks there. No question marks as to what Florida International is getting with this man. Corey Stevenson, 6'6" combo player. He was averaging about 14.5 points, a steal, 5.5 rebounds per game over at Cal State Bakersfield. Meep for the Roadrunners, and meep to the fact that he's road running on over to Florida International. For Florida International, they actually did a better job than what their record would indicate last season. There were a lot of games where they were close, but no cigarro. It's a bunch that was able to get much better rebounding last season. The offense was actually the biggest issue for them. The defense was able to come along for the ride for Florida International. Just feels like things have been a little bit stagnant in general for Florida International over the last few seasons, but we'll see if they're able to find what they need to be able to take that next step forward. But I do think that this is big for them, as I believe that this is the first move that they made in the transfer portal, might be the second, but they need to get a little bit more of a move on, but that's a good place to be able to start. And this is a good pickup as well, as you've got Amar Uyagard. He was one of the top junior college players in all of college basketball in the cycle of 2024. Played 11 games over at Fresno State, so he avoided the gambling scandal. He averaged 13.5 points per contest. Apparently, he was named JUCO Player of the Year by some sort of a publication in 2024 as well. He's decided that he's going to UW-Milwaukee now. Long and winding road. This is his third school because he was at Fresno State. He then transferred to Western Illinois, and then he transferred out of Western Illinois after sitting out this past semester for reasons I don't know. So that's very interesting to say the least. But you know what? That's a good pickup for UW-Milwaukee. They've done a good job being able to find some of these diamonds in the rough, and I do think that he's going to be able to do a nice job of being able to elevate this team, and I do think that this is going to work out very well for them. I think that this one is going to be able to work out pretty solidly as well. Dangmeyer, he was over at North Dakota this past season, averaged about 6.5 points, 4 rebounds per contest. Not a guy that's really going to be super duper versatile or anything like that, but a guy that's familiar with the Summit League. He's going to be going on over to Omaha for Dangmeyer. He was always a rock solid player over at North Dakota, spent a few seasons there. I don't think that he's going to be any sort of an elevator, but if you're looking for him to come on off the bench, be able to give you guys a little bit of production, both in terms of scoring and in terms of rebounding front, I think that he's going to be able to do so. So I do like that pickup for them. And then I do like this pickup as well, as you've got UT Arlington getting Sony Hadnot into the fold. He was over at South Dakota State this last season. He averaged about 6.5 points, 4 rebounds per game. Now, he wasn't South Dakota State's like number 1 creme de la creme 3-point shooter or anything like that, but when you're playing in that South Dakota State system, you always have to be able to pop it from 3-point range, and he was able to do a nice job at 6'6" of giving the team a little bit more rough and tumble on the defensive side of things. Only did shoot about 22.5% from 3-point range, so that's a little bit of an issue. But for UT Arlington, they need more defense after what we saw a season ago, and he should be able to supply that. Tyler Andrews, he was over at Eastern Kentucky this past season, saw about 11 minutes per contest, 3.5 points per game. He began his career over at UMKC. He's heading on over to Bethune-Cookman. Bethune-Cookman has had a really good track record of being able to bring in versatile 6'5", 6'6" guys, get them to be able to perform in their system. They need a little bit more rebounding. Andrews should be able to provide that, so I do like that pickup for them. You've got Gehrig Nomad. He has decided that he is going to be going on over to Santa Clara. He last season was over at Michigan State. He saw a very limited amount of playing time. He only played in like half the games for the team, actually a little bit less than half the games. He played 13 games in total, just was not able to find his footing with the team, but he's a former top 125 recruit. At 6'5", he's got a nice skill set, is able to pop it from three-point range, guard multiple positions from everything that I saw from him coming out of high school, so I do think that he's going to be able to give this bunch a little bit of performance moving forward, so we'll see how that materializes. This has materialized as well. Kansas State bringing in Nate Johnson. For Kansas State, you can tell that they're bringing in more mid-major guys, less splashy names, but more stake. We were talking about this with Ryan McIntyre in the last segment, and I do think that this is going to be a nice add for them. He, last season in the MAC, gave the team 14 points, 3.5 assists, 1.7 steals per contest, has been able to go to an NCAA tournament in the past, more than what we could say for most of these guys on the Kansas State side of things. Not a guy that was really able to pop it from three-point range overly efficiently, but you know what? He's going to be able to check a lot of boxes, and this is going to be a Kansas State team that plays much better defense than they did a season ago. And then you've got Vincent Delano. He was over at Portland this last season, part-time starter, average about 5.5 points per contest. He has decided that he is going to be going to Northern Colorado. Northern Colorado, always known for not playing a lot of defense, and Portland, well, they did not play a lot of defense, so he'll very much fit in there. But as we know, Northern Colorado, also known for very efficient offense. Guy that only shot about 25% from three-point, so he's not going to give you a ton there. You're probably going to need him to be a little bit more of a primary ball handler. I do think that he might have that in his bag, so we'll see what sort of a role he's able to find with Northern Colorado. But he is a kid from the great state of Arizona. As we know, it is a very spread out conference that Northern Colorado plays in as well, so I think that that's going to suit him well, and hopefully this podcast is suiting you well as we're looking at all that we're getting in college basketball, getting you set for what will hopefully be the greatest season ever in the 2025-26 campaign. And if you do like hearing from this fine podcast, Go Soups, you're able to subscribe wherever you get your podcasts, Apple Podcasts, Google Play, Spotify, Stitcher, and TuneIn. If you have a question, comment, segment idea, what have you for this podcast, you have one of two ways we offer those in. First one is my Twitter/X timeline at GUNet_81. Keep in mind, letters EM, they mean does not matter, so per usual, please do send these into the timeline. The other way is find an Apple Podcast review. If you rate this podcast 5 stars, it is very much appreciated. From there, you're able to fire in whatever you'd like to hear on this podcast via that 5-star review. Big thanks once again to Ryan McIntyre over at the Sports Gambling Podcast Network for joining me in my segment, and I'm with you guys every single day on this podcast, regular season and off season, so I'll be back with you once again tomorrow. Thank you.